The champagne flutes clinked around me, a hollow, echoing sound against the forced gaiety of the wedding reception. Honestly, Margaret, you must be thrilled to finally have Eleanor marrying into our family, Jessica's mother, Patricia drawled, her eyes scanning my simple, navy dress with barely concealed disdain. I mean, it's quite a step up, isn't it? Her smile was as brittle as the sugar flowers adorning the five-tiered wedding cake. I forced a smile of my own. I'm very happy for Eleanor and Jessica, I replied, keeping my voice even. They seemed to make each other happy. Patricia's laugh was short and sharp. Happy, darling. Jessica's ecstatic. Think of the opportunities this marriage brings her. Poor Julian's family is, well, let's just say they're not exactly known for their sophistication. No offense, of course. I excused myself, the saccharine scent of the wedding lilies suddenly cloying. Stepping out onto the balcony, the cool evening air was a welcome relief. I could still hear the music throbbing from inside, a constant reminder of the charade unfolding within. I closed my eyes, the memory of Jessica's overheard phone conversation playing on repeat in my mind. "Don't worry, Marcus," she'd whispered, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Once I marry Eleanor, that inheritance is as good as ours. Old Margaret won't know what hit her." The casual cruelty in her voice, the utter disregard for my daughter's happiness, had chilled me to the bone. I opened my eyes, my gaze sweeping across the manicured lawns of the estate. This wedding, this elaborate spectacle, was nothing more than a meticulously crafted facade, a way for Jessica Miller Sarah Collins, whose real name I now knew to be Sarah Collins, and her accomplice, Marcus Rivera, to steal my family's fortune. I'd initially dismissed my suspicions. After all, Jessica seemed so charming, so devoted to Eleanor, but the overheard conversation, coupled with the subtle digs about my family's lack of sophistication, had solidified my fears into a cold, hard certainty. My initial reaction had been a mixture of shock and disbelief. How could I have been so blind? How could I have let this woman, this predator, get so close to my family? The thought of Eleanor, so trusting and naive, being used in this way filled me with a quiet rage. But the shock quickly morphed into resolve. I wouldn't let them get away with it. I wouldn't let them ruin my daughter's life and steal our family's legacy. I'd spent the last few weeks meticulously piecing together the truth. Hiring a private investigator had been my first step. He'd uncovered Jessica's real identity, her previous marriage, and her connection to Marcus, a known con artist with a history of financial fraud. The evidence was damning. It painted a clear picture of a calculated scheme, one that had been years in the making. My next move was to contact Marcus. He'd been surprisingly easy to find, his greed outweighing any loyalty he might have felt towards Jessica. He'd agreed to cooperate, eager to avoid any legal repercussions. I glanced back at the reception, the lights twinkling through the French doors. The thought of confronting Jessica directly, of exposing her lies in front of everyone, was tempting, but I knew that wouldn't be enough. I wanted to make sure that she and Marcus wouldn't be able to target anyone else. I wanted to dismantle their entire operation, to leave them with nothing. My plan was simple, yet effective. I'd let the wedding proceed, allowing Jessica to believe she'd succeeded. Then, at the precise moment, I would expose her not just to the guests, but to the authorities waiting discreetly nearby. I checked my watch. The time was almost upon us. Taking a deep breath, I smoothed down my dress and walked back into the reception, a faint smile playing on my lips. I found Eleanor chatting animatedly with a group of friends, her face radiant with happiness. My heart ached for her, knowing the pain that was to come. But I also knew that this was the only way to protect her, to ensure her future happiness. "Eleanor, darling," I said, my voice calm and steady, "could you come with me for a moment? There's something I need to show you." The anticipation thrummed in my veins, a low, steady hum. Tonight, Jessica Miller Sarah Collins would get exactly what she deserved. Tonight, she would learn that messing with my family comes at a price. And tonight, I would reclaim what was rightfully ours, including our peace of mind. Starting with this grand illusion of a wedding, I led Eleanor towards a small, secluded room off the main ballroom, my gaze lingering on Jessica, who was watching us with a puzzled expression. The game was about to begin. Rain lashed against the windows of my sunroom, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. 6 months. 6 months until Andrew and Jessica Miller Sarah Collins were supposed to say I do. 6 months until I officially welcomed her into our family. I smoothed out the linen tablecloth, meticulously arranging the miniature silver spoons and porcelain teacups. "Eleanor, darling, could you bring the sugar bowl?" I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the large room. My daughter emerged from the kitchen, a delicate china bowl in her hands. "Here you go, Mom," she said, placing it gently on the table. "Everything looks beautiful. Andrew's going to be so happy." I managed a weak smile. "I hope so, dear. I truly do." We were finalizing the catering menu for the wedding reception, an extravagant affair I'd insisted on hosting at our family estate. It was to be a perfect day, a celebration of love and new beginnings. Or so I thought. Truth be told, a knot of unease had been tightening in my stomach ever since Andrew introduced Jessica. Something about her smile, something about the way her eyes darted around the room, taking in every detail of our home, hadn't sat right with me. "Mom, are you even listening?" Eleanor's voice interrupted my thoughts. "Mrs. Dubois is asking about the dessert options." I shook my head, trying to dispel the unsettling feeling. "Yes, of course, dear. Tell her we'll go with the chocolate gannat cake. Andrew loves that." My daughter relayed the message, her brow furrowed slightly. "Are you all right, Mom? You seem distracted." I waved a dismissive hand. "Just wedding jitters, darling. It's a lot to organize." The meeting with the caterer stretched on, each course meticulously planned, each detail scrutinized. As I sipped my lukewarm tea, my gaze drifted to the window. The rain had stopped, and a sliver of sunlight peeked through the clouds. It illuminated a small, antique music box sitting on a side table, a gift from my late husband. I reached out and touched its smooth wooden surface, a wave of nostalgia washing over me. This house, this estate, represented generations of our family's hard work and legacy. It was more than just bricks and mortar. It was a symbol of everything we had built, and I was determined to protect it. The caterer finally left, leaving Eleanor and me alone in the sunroom. "Mom," Eleanor began hesitantly, "I need to ask you something." I turned to face her, a questioning look on my face. "What is it, dear?" She took a deep breath. "It's about Jessica. Do you know you really like her?" My hesitation was barely perceptible, but Eleanor noticed. "You don't, do you?" she pressed. I sighed, choosing my words carefully. "It's not that I dislike her, Eleanor. It's just, I have a feeling about her. A mother's intuition, you might call it." Eleanor frowned. "But Andrew's so happy with her. He's never been like this with anyone before, I know, dear. And that's why I'm trying to keep an open mind." I took her hand. "But please, promise me you'll be careful. Don't let your brother rush into anything he might regret later." Later that evening, I found myself staring at the family portraits lining the hallway. My gaze settled on a picture of my late husband, his eyes twinkling with warmth. I remembered the promises we had made to each other, the dreams we had shared for our children. A sudden surge of protectiveness welled up inside me. I wouldn't let anyone, not even Jessica Miller Sarah Collins, jeopardize the future we had envisioned. Picking up the phone, I dialed a number I'd been given by a trusted friend. "Hello, Mr. Peterson. This is Margaret Thompson. We spoke a few weeks ago about a sensitive matter. I think it's time we had a proper meeting." As I hung up, a flicker of determination sparked in my eyes. The rain had stopped, and the setting sun cast long shadows across the lawn. It was time to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. I had a family to protect and a legacy to uphold. The wedding might be 6 months away, but my journey had just begun. Rain lashed against Andrew's apartment window, blurring the city lights into hazy halos. Each drop felt like a tiny hammer blow against my already fractured heart. I sat on the edge of the sofa, clutching a lukewarm cup of tea, pretending to admire the view. Eleanor had insisted I come over, wanting my help with some last-minute wedding favors. She'd said, "Jessica Miller Sarah Collins is out with her cousin," Eleanor had added, her voice strained. "Cousin, right?" I already knew what, or rather who, Jessica Miller Sarah Collins was really out with. I'd seen the private investigator's photos. Marcus Rivera, Jessica Miller Sarah Collins' supposed ex, the man she'd swore she hadn't spoken to in years. The same man I'd seen her kissing passionately just 2 nights ago outside a downtown restaurant. The lie tasted bitter, clinging to the back of my throat. "Mom, you okay?" Eleanor's voice broke through my reverie. She sat beside me, a basket of ribbons and tulle spilling onto the coffee table. "You seem distant." "Just tired, dear," I lied, forcing a smile. "All this wedding planning is catching up to me. Tell me about it." Eleanor chuckled, but her eyes held a worried glint. "Jessica Miller Sarah Collins has been stressed a lot." Oh, I feigned casual interest, my pulse quickening. This was my chance, a chance to confirm my suspicions, to hear it from Jessica Miller Sarah Collins' own lips, to finally know for sure. Just then, the apartment door swung open, and Jessica Miller Sarah Collins breezed in, a whirlwind of apologies and forced cheerfulness. "So sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare." She pecked Eleanor on the cheek and offered me a tight-lipped smile. "Margaret, so good to see you." Her words were sugary sweet, but her eyes were cold. "You too, dear," I replied, my voice even. I watched as she shrugged off her coat, her movements almost too casual, too deliberate. She pulled her phone from her purse, her fingers dancing across the screen. Just need to make a quick call, she murmured, heading toward the balcony. I held my breath. This was it. Eleanor and I exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between us. We both knew something was amiss. The balcony door slid shut behind Jessica Miller Sarah Collins with a soft click, leaving just enough space for her voice to filter back into the living room. "Marcus, darling," she purred into the phone, her voice dripping with fake affection. "Everything's going perfectly. The old bat has no idea." My stomach lurched. Old bat? Was she talking about me? My hands tightened around my teacup. Jessica Miller Sarah Collins' voice continued, low and conspiratorial. "Eleanor is completely wrapped around my finger. And Andrew, he's practically handing me his inheritance on a silver platter." The cup in my hands rattled precariously. I wanted to scream, to confront her, but something held me back. A cold, quiet resolve began to solidify within me. "Once we're married," Jessica Miller Sarah Collins continued, her voice laced with barely concealed triumph, "I'll have access to everything. The house, the trust fund, the whole 9 yards. Then poof, I'm gone. You and I will be sipping margaritas on a beach somewhere, laughing all the way to the bank." A choked sob escaped my lips. Eleanor looked at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Mom, what is she saying?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words hung in the air, thick and heavy, suffocating me. Everything clicked into place. The lavish spending, the whispered phone calls, the sudden trips out of town. It was all a lie, a meticulously crafted performance, designed to steal everything my family had worked for. Jessica Miller Sarah Collins' laughter drifted in from the balcony, sharp and grating. "Don't worry, darling," she said. "This old fool won't see it coming." The words hit me like a physical blow. Fool. She thought I was a fool, but I wasn't a fool. I was a mother, and I would protect my family, no matter the cost. The rain outside intensified, mirroring the storm raging inside me. The betrayal was deep, the wound raw and bleeding. But through the pain, a flicker of something else began to ignite. Not anger, not quite. Something colder, sharper. A quiet resolve, a plan. I stood up, setting the trembling teacup on the table. Eleanor watched me, her face pale and stricken. "Mom," she whispered, "what are you going to do?" I looked at my daughter, my heart aching for her, for the pain she was about to endure. But I knew there was no other way. This had to end. "Tonight." "Don't worry, dear," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I have a plan." I turned toward the balcony, a faint smile playing on my lips. "And Jessica Miller Sarah Collins, she's going to get the surprise of her life." The image of Jessica Miller Sarah Collins' shocked face flashed through my mind, a small, bitter comfort amidst the swirling chaos. The wedding was just days away. It would be a wedding she wouldn't soon forget. Rain lashed against my windshield, blurring the city lights into hazy streaks of color. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. How could I have been so blind, so stupid? Jessica Miller Sarah Collins, the woman my Eleanor was about to marry, the woman I welcomed into my home, into my family, was a fraud, a con artist. I'd overheard her talking to someone on the phone, someone she called Marcus. The old lady's none the wiser, she'd purred. Andrew's completely smitten. The inheritance is as good as ours. My stomach churned at the memory of her words. Mine, ours. As if my family's legacy, the money my late husband and I worked so hard for, was just some prize to be claimed. I started the engine, the hum a small comfort in the oppressive silence of the car. The wipers swished back and forth, mirroring the turmoil in my mind. I thought back to the day Eleanor introduced Jessica. She was charming, intelligent, beautiful, everything a mother could want for her child. "Mom, you're going to love her," Eleanor had gushed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. And I did. I truly did. I had embraced Jessica wholeheartedly, seeing her as the daughter I never had. I had even offered to help with the wedding expenses. It would be my pleasure, I had told her, beaming with pride. Now, the thought of that generosity made me sick. It was like offering a thief the key to the vault. I pulled over to the side of the road, the streetlights casting long, distorted shadows. The rain continued to fall, a relentless drumming against the car roof. It felt like the sky was weeping for me, for my foolishness, for the betrayal I felt so deeply. I had been so happy for Eleanor, so excited to see her settle down. She's the one. Mom, Eleanor had confided in me just a few weeks ago. I know it. And I had believed her. I had wanted to believe her. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel, the cold leather a stark contrast to the burning shame that coursed through me. How could I have missed the signs? Had I been so blinded by my desire for Eleanor's happiness that I ignored the red flags? There had been moments, fleeting glimpses of something beneath Jessica's polished exterior, a hardness in her eyes, a subtle shift in her tone when she talked about money. But I had dismissed them as my own insecurities, as the anxieties of a mother worried about her child. "You're just being overprotective," my sister had told me when I'd voiced my concerns about the speed of Eleanor and Jessica's engagement. "They're in love. Let them be happy." Now her words echoed in my ears, a cruel reminder of my own naivete. I had allowed myself to be lulled into a false sense of security. I had trusted, and I had been betrayed. I took a deep breath, the cool air filling my lungs. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, the streetlights now reflecting off the wet pavement like scattered diamonds. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face was pale, my eyes red-rimmed. I looked defeated, but as I stared at myself, a flicker of something else ignited within me. It wasn't defeat. It was anger, a quiet, burning anger that spread through me like wildfire. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I wasn't going to let Jessica Miller, Sarah Collins, and her accomplice rob my family blind. I would not stand by and watch them destroy everything my husband and I had built. I would fight back. I straightened up, my grip on the steering wheel firm. The anger solidified into resolve, a steely determination that hardened my gaze. They thought they were clever, these two. They thought they could outsmart me. They underestimated the lengths a mother would go to protect her family. They underestimated me. I had a few tricks up my sleeve too, and I was just getting started. The faintest hint of a smile played on my lips. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I knew who I needed to call. The game was on, and I was ready to play. Rain lashed against the window of the private investigator's office, mirroring the storm inside me. I clutched my handbag, the leather cold against my knuckles. Just a week ago, I was happily planning Eleanor's wedding and visioning her future with her. With Jessica Miller, Sarah Collins. Mr. Henderson, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. A man with kind eyes and steel gray hair rose from behind a cluttered desk. Mrs. Thompson, please, have a seat. He gestured towards a chair opposite him. I sank into it, the worn leather creaking beneath me. I appreciate you seeing me on such short notice. Of course, Mr. Henderson said, his voice calm and reassuring. Your daughter's happiness is important. He opened a file on his desk. Eleanor, is it? Yes, I confirmed, picking at a loose thread on my handbag. And her fiancée is Jessica Miller, Sarah Collins. The name felt like acid on my tongue. I need to know the truth about her. Mr. Henderson nodded, his gaze steady. Tell me everything. And so I did. I told him about the overheard conversation, the whispered phone calls, the strange inconsistencies in Jessica Miller, Sarah Collins' stories, the gnawing unease that had settled in my stomach and refused to leave, the way my intuition screamed that something wasn't right, the way my daughter, usually so perceptive, seemed blinded by love, infatuation. I wasn't sure anymore. I've already done some preliminary digging, Mr. Henderson said, interrupting my rambling thoughts. He pushed a photograph across the desk. It was Jessica Miller, Sarah Collins, but different. Her hair was darker, shorter. She was smiling, a genuine, carefree smile I'd never seen directed at my family. This was taken 2 years ago. She was going by the name Sarah Collins then. My breath hitched. Sarah Collins, I whispered, the name echoing the whispers I'd overheard. This was it. This was the confirmation I dreaded. She was involved with a man named Marcus Rivera, Mr. Henderson continued. They were suspected of running a series of small-time scams, targeting wealthy families. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. They'd infiltrate social circles, gain trust, and then disappear. My blood ran cold. Disappear, with whatever they could get their hands on. He confirmed, his eyes meeting mine. Jewelry, cash, sometimes even larger assets. I thought of Eleanor's trust fund, the inheritance my late husband had meticulously set aside for her future. The future Jessica Miller, Sarah Collins was so eager to share. I need proof, I said, my voice shaking. Concrete proof that she's planning to do the same to my daughter. I understand, Mr. Henderson replied. I'll need some time, of course. But I assure you, Mrs. Thompson, I'll get to the bottom of this. The rain outside had stopped. A sliver of sunlight peeked through the clouds, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It felt ominous. How long? I asked, my voice barely a breath. A week, maybe 2. He said, shuffling some papers on his desk. The wedding is in 3 weeks, correct? I nodded, my heart sinking. 3 weeks. Not enough time. Can you expedite it? I pleaded. I'm willing to pay whatever it takes. Mr. Henderson considered this for a moment. I can try, he said finally. But these things take time, Mrs. Thompson. We need to be thorough. We need to be discreet. Discreet? The word tasted like ash in my mouth. I wanted to scream, to shout Jessica Miller, Sarah Collins' real name from the rooftops. I wanted to protect Eleanor, to shield her from the heartbreak that was surely coming. But I knew Mr. Henderson was right. I needed to be smart. I needed to be patient. All right, I agreed, rising to my feet. I'll be in touch. As I walked out of the office, the sliver of sunlight disappeared, swallowed by another wave of dark clouds. The rain started again, heavier this time, as if mirroring the weight of the truth I now carried. I hailed a cab, sinking into the back seat, the damp leather clinging to my clothes. 2 weeks, maybe less. I had to find a way to stall the wedding. I had to buy myself some time. But how I closed my eyes, trying to block out the image of Jessica Miller Sarah Collins' deceitful smile, the image of her standing at the altar with my daughter, her hand outstretched, ready to accept not only Eleanor's love, but also her fortune. I wouldn't let that happen, not while I still breathed. A flicker of resolve ignited within me, a small flame in the darkness. I would find a way. I would protect my daughter, even if it meant destroying everything Jessica Miller Sarah Collins held dear, even if it meant turning their fairy tale wedding into a nightmare. The cab pulled away from the curb, merging into the city's relentless flow. The rain continued to fall, washing away the last vestiges of my naivete, leaving behind only the cold, hard reality of what I had to do. The aroma of Earl Grey tea hung in the air, a stark contrast to the bitter taste in my mouth. I'd barely slept since Eleanor's engagement party, plagued by the unsettling feeling that something was terribly wrong with Jessica Miller Sarah Collins. "Mr. Davis," I said, gesturing to the chair opposite me at the kitchen table, "thank you for coming on such short notice." He nodded, placing a thick manila envelope on the table. "Mrs. Thompson," he began, his voice low and professional, "I believe this contains the information you requested." My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the envelope. Inside were photographs, documents, and a detailed report. I flipped through the pages, my heart sinking with each new revelation. The woman my daughter was about to marry was a fraud. This can't be right," I whispered, my voice barely audible. Mr. Davis leaned forward. "I understand this is difficult, Mrs. Thompson, but the evidence is irrefutable." He pointed to a photo of Jessica, or rather, Sarah Collins, as her real name indicated, with a man I didn't recognize. "This is Marcus Rivera, her known accomplice. They've worked together on several similar schemes." "Schemes," I repeated, my mind racing. He nodded grimly. "They target wealthy families, insert themselves into the lives of their children, and then they disappear with whatever they can get their hands on." My blood ran cold. Eleanor, my sweet, trusting Eleanor, was about to walk into a trap. My daughter's inheritance. I trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Mr. Davis confirmed my fears. "According to our investigation, Miss Collins, or Ms. Miller as she now calls herself, has been systematically isolating your daughter from her friends and family. This is a common tactic they employ to gain full control of their victims' finances." I stared at the documents, my mind a whirlwind of anger and fear. How could I have been so blind? I'd welcomed Jessica into my home, into my family. I'd even started planning the wedding, a lavish affair Eleanor had always dreamed of. "The wedding," I muttered, my voice thick with emotion. "It's next month, Mr. Davis's expression remained neutral. I understand. What do you intend to do with this information? Mrs. Thompson, I took a deep breath, the scent of Earl Grey suddenly nauseating. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about protecting my daughter from a predator. I'm going to stop this wedding, I declared, a newfound steel in my voice. But not just stop it, I continued, a chilling resolve hardening my gaze. I'm going to expose her for who she really is. In front of everyone. Mr. Davis raised an eyebrow. That could be risky, Mrs. Thompson. Ms. Collins and her accomplice are likely to disappear the moment they sense exposure. I offered a thin smile. That's where you're wrong, Mr. Davis. They won't disappear. They'll be too busy dealing with the consequences of their actions. I tapped the file on the table. You've given me everything I need. Now, I need your help with one more thing. I spent the next few days in a flurry of activity, fueled by a quiet fury. I met with Mr. Davis several times, meticulously planning every detail of my revenge. We contacted Marcus Rivera, offering him immunity in exchange for his testimony against Jessica. He agreed, eager to avoid jail time and perhaps harboring a bit of resentment towards his former partner. Then, I turned my attention to the wedding itself. I contacted the florist, the caterer, the venue manager. I confirmed every booking, ensuring everything would go ahead as planned. Jessica, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her, continued to play the role of the loving fiancé, oblivious to the fact that her web of lies was about to unravel. "Eleanor, darling," I said one afternoon, finding her in the garden, poring over wedding invitations. "Everything's coming along beautifully, isn't it?" She looked up, her face beaming. "It's perfect, Mom. Just like I always dreamed it would be." My heart ached for her, knowing the pain that was to come. But I also knew that this was the only way. She needed to see Jessica's true colors before it was too late. The day before the wedding, I met with Mr. Davis one last time. "Everything's in place," he assured me. "Marcus Rivera is ready to testify, and we have security personnel stationed throughout the venue to ensure things don't get out of hand." I nodded, my stomach twisting with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. "Thank you, Mr. Davis," I said, handing him a final check. "You've been invaluable." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I imagined Jessica's face when her carefully constructed facade crumbled around her. I pictured Eleanor's heartbreak, but also her eventual relief at having escaped a disastrous marriage. The image that brought me the most satisfaction, however, was the thought of Jessica and Marcus facing the consequences of their actions. They wouldn't get away with it. Not this time. Not on my watch. The wedding day dawned bright and sunny, a cruel irony given the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. I dressed carefully, choosing an elegant gown that exuded strength and composure. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a battle, and I was ready to fight for my daughter's future. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw not a grieving mother, but a warrior ready to unleash her carefully crafted revenge. The game, Jessica Miller Sarah Collins, was about to begin. Rain lashed against the kitchen window, mirroring the turmoil inside me. I meticulously polished the silver teapot, the rhythmic motion a small comfort in the storm brewing in my mind. "Almost time," I murmured to myself, more a statement of grim determination than of anticipation. The wedding was just 2 days away. 2 days until Jessica Miller, or should I say Sarah Collins, got exactly what she deserved. I glanced at the clock. He should be here any minute. A sharp rap at the back door made me jump. Taking a deep breath, I smoothed down my apron and opened the door to find a man huddled under a large, dripping umbrella. "Mr. Rivera?" I asked, though I knew it was him. He'd aged considerably since the photo the investigator had shown me. Lines etched deeper into his face, a weariness clinging to him like the damp wool of his coat. "Mrs. Thompson," he replied, his voice a low rumble. I stepped aside, gesturing for him to enter. "Please, come in. Can I get you some tea, coffee?" He shook his head, water droplets scattering from his umbrella. "No, thank you. I won't stay long." He looked around my kitchen, his eyes lingering on the family photos that adorned the walls. Pictures of Eleanor, radiating joy, a stark contrast to the darkness that had settled over our lives since Jessica Miller Sarah Collins had slithered into it. "Please sit," I insisted, gesturing to a chair at the kitchen table. He hesitated, then reluctantly sat down. I poured myself a cup of tea, my hands surprisingly steady. "Mr. Rivera, I know this is difficult," I began, my voice soft, "but I need your help." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of suspicion and fear. "I don't know what you're talking about," he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. "You were involved with Sarah Jessica. I mean, weren't you?" I pressed, my tone gentle but firm. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "That was a long time ago. I've moved on. I know about the scam you pulled in California," I said, my voice calm and even. "The one with the fake investment scheme." His head snapped up, his eyes wide with alarm. How did you?" he stammered. I placed a file on the table in front of him. "My private investigator is very thorough." He stared at the file, his face paling. "I didn't want to be involved," he said, his voice barely a whisper. She made me." I leaned forward, my voice low and urgent. "I believe you, Mr. Rivera. I know she's manipulative. That's why I need your help to stop her from doing the same thing to my family." He remained silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the file. The rain continued to batter the window pane, the sound a constant, rhythmic drumbeat. Finally, he looked up at me, his eyes filled with resignation. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. I outlined my plan, explaining how he could expose Jessica Miller Sarah Collins at the wedding. He listened intently, asking clarifying questions, his initial fear gradually replaced by a flicker of was it hope, or perhaps a desire for redemption. He agreed to cooperate, providing key details about Jessica's past and her current scheme, information that would be crucial to my plan. He even offered to provide concrete evidence, emails, bank statements that would irrefutably prove Jessica's deceitful intentions. "I have a flash drive with everything," he said, pulling a small device from his pocket. "It's encrypted, but I'll give you the password." I took the drive, my heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. This was it. This was the key to exposing Jessica and protecting my family. As Mr. Rivera prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, his voice hesitant, "I am sorry for what I did. I truly am. I looked at him, seeing not a hardened criminal, but a man who had made mistakes and was now trying to make amends. Thank you, Mr. Rivera, I said sincerely. Your help means more than you know. He nodded, a small flicker of something that looked like relief crossing his face, then turned and disappeared into the storm. I watched him go, the rain still falling, washing away the tension that had gripped me for so long. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Confronting Jessica Miller Sarah Collins would be painful, a public spectacle that would undoubtedly cause heartache and embarrassment. But I was prepared. I had to be. For Eleanor, for my family, I would see this through. I had one last card to play, a final detail that would ensure Jessica's downfall was complete and utter. It involved a certain asset, one that Jessica believed she would soon have control over. She had no idea what was coming. The wedding, after all, was just the beginning. Rain lashed against the windows of my study, mirroring the storm raging inside me. I dialed the number, my hand trembling slightly. After 2 rings, a gruff voice answered. "Yeah, Marcus Rivera," I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Who's asking?" He snapped back. "It's Margaret Thompson, Eleanor's mother," I replied, holding my breath. There was a pause, a shuffling sound on the other end. "What do you want?" he finally asked, suspicion lacing his tone. "I know about you and Jessica Miller Sarah Collins," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Another silence, heavier this time. Then, "I don't know what you're talking about," I pressed on. "I know about Sarah Collins. I know about the plan." He scoffed. "Look, lady, I don't know any Sarah Collins, and I definitely don't have a plan with your daughter's fiancé. Don't play games, Marcus," I said, my voice hardening. "I have proof. I know how you two met, how you've been working together to defraud my daughter." This time the silence stretched, taut with unspoken tension. Finally, he sighed. "What kind of proof?" I detailed the information my private investigator had unearthed. The fake identities, the shell corporations, the whispered phone calls, the secret meetings. I laid it all bare, painting a clear picture of their deceit. With each revealed detail, I could practically hear the blood draining from his face. When I finished, the silence returned, but this time it was different. It was the silence of defeat. "All right," he finally conceded, his voice low. "What do you want?" I took a deep breath. "I want you to help me expose her at the wedding." He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You're crazy. She'll destroy me." "Not if we destroy her first," I countered. "I can offer you immunity, full cooperation from the authorities, a chance to walk away from this with a clean slate." There was a long pause, the sound of rain filling the silence between us. He was thinking it over, weighing his options. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. "What's in it for you?" he finally asked. "Justice for my daughter," I replied, my voice unwavering, "and the satisfaction of seeing Jessica Miller Sarah Collins get what she deserves." Another silence. Then, "All right," he said, his voice resigned. "I'm in." Over the next few days, Marcus and I worked tirelessly, coordinating our plan with the precision of a military operation. He provided me with crucial details about Jessica Miller Sarah Collins' scheme, filling in the gaps in my knowledge. He told me about the offshore accounts, the forged documents, the elaborate web of lies she'd spun. He even revealed her plan to elope with Eleanor's inheritance immediately after the wedding, leaving my daughter penniless and heartbroken. The more I learned, the more determined I became to see this through. We decided that Marcus would confront Jessica Miller Sarah Collins at the wedding reception, exposing her lies in front of everyone. He would present the evidence I'd gathered, the damning proof of her deceit. It was a risky plan, but it was our only chance. We knew Jessica Miller Sarah Collins was cunning and resourceful. We had to be one step ahead of her. The day of the wedding dawned bright and sunny, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. As I watched Eleanor walk down the aisle, radiant in her wedding dress, a wave of sadness washed over me. She looked so happy, so blissfully unaware of the betrayal that awaited her. I had to protect her, even if it meant breaking her heart in the process. The reception was held at a lavish estate, overlooking the ocean. Guests mingled, champagne flutes clinked, and music filled the air. Underneath the veneer of celebration, tension thrummed. I could feel it in the air, thick and suffocating. I watched as Jessica Miller Sarah Collins, dressed in a stunning white gown, flitted among the guests, her smile plastered on her face. She looked every bit the blushing bride, a wolf in sheep's clothing. The moment arrived, as Jessica Miller Sarah Collins and Eleanor took to the dance floor for their first dance as a married couple. Marcus stepped forward, microphone in hand. The music stopped abruptly, the sudden silence punctuated by the gasp of the crowd. All eyes turned to him. "I have an announcement to make," Marcus said, his voice booming across the room. Jessica Miller Sarah Collins' smile faltered, her eyes widening in alarm. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it, the moment of truth. The plan was in motion, the gears turning smoothly, inexorably leading to the downfall of Jessica Miller Sarah Collins. My daughter, Eleanor, wouldn't be a victim. Not today. The house, the inheritance, all their Setsley would remain safe. The holiday, this wedding, was about to become something else entirely. Something much darker. Sunlight streamed into my kitchen, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. But the brightness couldn't penetrate the gloom that had settled in my heart. The wedding was tomorrow. My Eleanor's wedding. A wedding I was now dreading. This charade has gone on long enough, I muttered to myself, picking at a stray thread on the tablecloth. Jessica Miller, or Sarah Collins as I now knew her, would be exposed. My daughter, bless her heart, was so blinded by love, she couldn't see the venomous snake coiled round her. "I have to protect her," I said aloud, the steel in my voice surprising even myself, even if it means hurting her in the short term. My phone buzzed. It was Mr. Henderson, the private investigator. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, his voice hushed. "I have everything you need. The evidence is irrefutable." A wave of relief washed over me. "Good," I replied, my voice steadier now. "Send it over immediately." Within minutes, the email arrived. Photos, bank statements, recorded conversations, all confirming Jessica's elaborate scheme to marry Eleanor, drain her inheritance, and disappear with her accomplice, Marcus Rivera. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the damning evidence. This wasn't just about money. It was about my daughter's happiness, her future. Jessica had spun a web of lies, portraying herself as a successful businesswoman, a loving partner. She's a chameleon, I whispered, my anger simmering. But tomorrow, her true colors will be revealed. I called the caterer, confirming the final headcount for the wedding reception. Everything's set. Mrs. Thompson, she chirped. It's going to be a beautiful day. It certainly will be, I replied, a cryptic smile playing on my lips. The next morning was a whirlwind of activity. Hair appointments, makeup artists, last-minute flower arrangements. Eleanor was radiant, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Mom, I'm so happy," she exclaimed, hugging me tightly. My heart ached. "I'm happy for you, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. But beneath the surface, my resolve hardened. This day would not be ruined by Jessica Miller. As the ceremony began, I took my seat in the front row, my gaze fixed on the entrance. Jessica appeared, a vision in white, her arm linked with my unsuspecting Eleanor. The look of pure joy on Eleanor's face was a stark contrast to the mask of composure Jessica wore. I caught Mr. Henderson's eye across the aisle. He gave me a subtle nod. It was time. During the reception, as the guests mingled and champagne flowed, I discreetly signaled to the DJ. The music faded, and a hush fell over the crowd. I stepped forward, microphone in hand. "I have an announcement to make," I began, my voice clear and strong. Eleanor looked at me, confusion etched on her face. Jessica, however, paled visibly. "Today, we celebrate the union of two people," I continued, my gaze sweeping across the room. "But before we proceed, I believe there's something important everyone should know." I turned to face Jessica, my eyes locked on hers. "Jessica Miller," I said, my voice ringing with authority. Or should I say, Sarah Collins. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Jessica's eyes widened in disbelief. "I believe you have something that belongs to me," I said, holding up a small, velvet box. It was the antique locket I had given Eleanor for her 18th birthday, a locket I knew Jessica had stolen just days before. This, along with several other items of considerable value, mysteriously disappeared from Eleanor's apartment shortly after you moved in. Murmurs erupted from the guests. Jessica opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "Don't bother denying it, Sarah," I said, my voice laced with contempt. "I have irrefutable evidence of your deception." I gestured to Mr. Henderson, who stepped forward, holding a large screen. On it flashed photos of Jessica with Marcus Rivera, bank statements showing suspicious transfers, and recordings of their conversations plotting to steal Eleanor's inheritance. The room was silent, save for the occasional gasp of shock. Eleanor stared at Jessica, her face a mixture of disbelief and hurt. "Is this true?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jessica remained silent, her face ashen. "Not only are you a thief," I continued, my voice rising, "but you're also a liar and a manipulator. You preyed on my daughter's kindness, her trust. You thought you could get away with it, but you underestimated one thing: a mother's love." I turned to Eleanor, my voice softening. "Sweetheart, I know this is painful, but it's better to know the truth now than to spend your life with someone who never truly loved you." Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. She looked at Jessica, her eyes filled with a mixture of pain and betrayal. I don't understand, she stammered. How could you? Jessica finally found her voice. It's not true, she shrieked. It's all a lie. But her words were drowned out by the murmurs of the guests. Marcus Rivera, who had been lurking in the back of the room, tried to slip away unnoticed, but security, alerted by Mr. Henderson, apprehended him before he could reach the exit. The police arrived shortly after, taking both Jessica and Marcus into custody. The wedding was over, not with a celebratory send-off, but with the sirens of police cars echoing in the night. The guests dispersed, whispering amongst themselves. I walked over to Eleanor, who stood alone, her shoulders slumped. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close. It's going to be okay, sweetheart, I whispered. It's all going to be okay. She clung to me, sobbing. The dream wedding had turned into a nightmare, but at least the truth was out. And now we could begin to heal. As for the honeymoon suite at the exclusive Maldives resort, well, I knew someone who deserved a little getaway. The champagne flutes clinked around me, a hollow, mocking sound. I forced a smile as Eleanor's future in-laws gushed about the beautiful ceremony, oblivious to the storm I was about to unleash. Everything's perfect, Margaret, Mrs. Peterson said, patting my hand. Eleanor is so lucky to have found such a wonderful husband in Jessica Miller Sarah Collins. I held her gaze, a flicker of something unreadable in my eyes. Yes, I replied smoothly. Isn't it wonderful? I took a sip of champagne, the bubbles feeling like acid in my throat. My daughter, sweet, trusting Eleanor, was about to walk into the biggest mistake of her life, and I, her mother, was about to make sure she didn't. I scanned the room, searching for the face I needed to see. There, near the dessert table, stood Marcus Rivera, looking distinctly uncomfortable in his ill-fitting suit. I caught his eye and gave him a subtle nod. It was time. He made his way towards the stage, clearing his throat nervously as he tapped the microphone. The chatter in the room slowly subsided, replaced by a low murmur of confusion. "Excuse me, everyone," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "I have something I need to say." He looked directly at Jessica Miller Sarah Collins, who was now frozen beside Eleanor, a mask of forced composure on her face. "Sarah," he said, using the name I knew was her real one, Sarah Collins, "I think these people deserve to know who you really are." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Eleanor turned to Jessica Miller Sarah Collins, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What is he talking about, Jessica?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jessica Miller Sarah Collins didn't answer. Her face had gone pale, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength with each word. "Sarah Collins," he said, "is a con artist. She's been using different names and identities for years, preying on vulnerable people for their money." He pulled out a small stack of photographs and held them up. "These," he announced, "are pictures of her with other fiancés, men she's used and discarded just like she planned to do with Eleanor." The room erupted in chaos. Guests were whispering amongst themselves, pointing at Jessica Miller Sarah Collins, and murmuring in disbelief. Eleanor stood frozen, her face a mixture of shock and confusion. This can't be true," she stammered. looking at Jessica Miller Sarah Collins with pleading eyes. Jessica Miller Sarah Collins finally found her voice. "It's a lie," she shrieked, her voice shrill and desperate. "He's lying. I love Eleanor." But her words were drowned out by the rising tide of accusations and disbelief. I stepped forward, my voice calm and steady amidst the chaos. "I'm afraid it's not a lie, Jessica," I said, meeting her gaze. "I hired a private investigator. We have evidence of your past schemes, your fake identities, and your plans to steal Eleanor's inheritance after the wedding." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "You see, Jessica," I continued, "I may have welcomed you into my family, but I never trusted you. A mother's intuition is a powerful thing." I gestured towards the security guards I had discreetly stationed at the entrance. "Please escort Ms. Collins out," I instructed. "I believe the police will be wanting to have a word with her." As Jessica Miller Sarah Collins was led away, screaming and protesting, I turned to Eleanor. She stood there still stunned, tears streaming down her face. I wrapped my arms round her, holding her close. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. "But it's better you know now, before it was too late." Eleanor clung to me, her body shaking with sobs. The wedding was ruined, the guests were leaving, and the carefully orchestrated fairy tale had turned into a nightmare. But as I looked at Eleanor, safe in my arms, I knew I had done the right thing. The house I'd signed over to Eleanor as a wedding gift, the one Jessica Miller Sarah Collins thought she was getting her hands on, well, that would stay exactly where it belonged, with my family.